Hi, everybody.
Hello, welcome back to our 13th episode. It's actually the second half of 2020 now, which is pretty crazy to think about. We want to spend this time to just kind of reflect on the past 6 months and how they've been for us. It's been quite a change, but it's actually been pretty pleasant, I think, overall in terms of the mentality that we've had as far as changing our financial habits, as well as just feeling like this is something that is pretty sustainable for us. So this time's going to be a little different. We're going to start with the recap for the month first before we get into the rest of the episode. So here's the recap. It's June update time, folks. And let me tell you, this was a great month, especially coming off of the last month, which was my furlough. Our current minimum payments are the same probably until September, and that's $1,735.75. As we mentioned in the past, that is only our earnest loans. That has nothing to do with any of our federal loans, which are currently on freeze. Our extra payments were $6,445.67. This was in large part due to my coaching stipend, which came in this month, which was much appreciated. It's the largest additional payment that I receive every year, which includes my bonus payments as well as my 3 paycheck months. But that's why you see such a large extra payment amount for this month in particular. That brings our June total up to $8,181.42. This has been our biggest month so far this year, and one that I was very excited for. Our 2020 total is now up to $29,807.28, and out of our $50,000 goal, we're 60% of the way there.
All right. So overall, I'm really proud of what we've been able to accomplish in 6 months. Saving almost $30,000 is fantastic. And I sort of like Nick said at the beginning, we felt pretty good. I read about frugal fatigue this past week and how to overcome that, but I haven't really felt it. We're saving a really large amount of money, but it doesn't feel like we're really limiting ourselves or not being able to enjoy what we have been spending. I think that a big part of that has actually been the pandemic. One of the biggest fears that I had when we started all of this was having to say no to family and friends and getting to spend time together. That's something that's really important to me. And I was worried about having to limit myself or ourselves from those hangouts, I guess. And what the pandemic has done is removed any opportunity for that. And so we haven't had to feel guilty for saying no. We haven't had the temptation to even go do things because we've been staying at home and wanting to continue to stay at home.
So I don't want anybody to get the impression that we're happy about the pandemic by any means. This hasn't been a straight financial win for us. I was furloughed, as I mentioned before, for 2 weeks, and so that lost income definitely hurt us as far as reaching our goal of paying off our student loans faster. I was able to recoup some of that cost through unemployment, but not all of it, and I'm actually still waiting to even hear back on one of the weeks of unemployment I applied for. And just like everybody else that had been putting away money in their 401k in the stock market, obviously we were not immune to that sort of pressure from COVID either. My 401k took a pretty big hit starting in March.
That being said, I'm also very proud of how we handled the furloughs and that loss of income. We were able to find other areas of our budget where we could cut even more so that we could stay on track to meet our goals. That was a big roadblock, and we also hit one very early on in this new budget when we had to do our big well repair. And so staying on track and paying this much into our student loans over these past 6 months is something that I feel really good about.
Mm-hmm. It's also a good note for you if you're trying to budget, especially if you're brand new to this. We've been budgeting now for it's been almost 6 years. But if you are just now starting to budget, you have to realize that your budget is not a static plan. It has to be very dynamic. It has to be able to be fluidly changed month to month so that you can account for things that just you don't know that they're always going to happen. As you learned in the recap, a big part of the money that we had put down this month towards our student loans came from my track stipend that I received. I was fortunate enough that even though I wasn't able to coach this year for very long, the school is basically budgets their money out a year out, and so it was still able to be paid to me, and I was very fortunate for that. but that's probably the biggest chunk of money I get every year. And so the next several months, the next rest of the year, basically, I'll have a few other additional payments that we can put towards our student loans. But this is probably our biggest month here in June. So that said, with us having about $30,000 paid off, we can try to see it. Obviously, our goal was $50,000 for the year, but we might be, as we get a little closer, we might be making some adjustments to that amount and see, I mean, can we push it to $55,000? It's just that goal was sort of just the initial goal. We're going to change the goal as our parameters change, if you will.
As we're reflecting, were there any purchases that we made in this past 6 months that you think were really good ideas, or was there anything that you felt like we had to say no to that we wish we didn't?
I don't know that it's a purchase necessarily, but as I told you, with the months in a month of May, I was supposed to be a 3 paycheck month, but because of my furlough, I essentially lost more than a full paycheck there. So I got less money in May than I normally would in any other month, even though it was supposed to be my biggest month. Mm-hmm. And what we did is we made a lot of cost saving decisions, as far as, like, we said no pocket money for 1 month. And we also cashed in our cash back on all of our credit cards at the same time and put that towards loans. And so we had the decisions that we made over the course of May and really late April, mm-hmm. that gave us an extra $600, $700 to put down towards student loans. So I would say that's the number one thing for me, but it's not a purchase, you know?
Right. One thing that I'm proud of that was a purchase was the little garden hammock area that I made in the backyard. I was able to complete that project, which I think looks good and I'm very happy with, on a very limited budget. So a lot of the rocks, the river rock that's in that area, we got it for free because we saw a post of someone who was offering free landscaping rock if you could come dig it out of their garden beds yourself. So we were able to go do that. We also borrowed tools and a trailer from our neighbors who are very generous, and that helped a lot. They also just gave us some landscaping cloth barrier. So that whole project cost very little, but it's a project that turned out really well. And so I think that I was savvy with the resources that were available to me.
We've never really been a couple that spends like crazy necessarily, but this is still a pretty big change that we've made starting at the beginning of this year. And it's not been easy, but it also hasn't been extremely difficult, at least I don't feel like, because we've kind of been preparing for this over the last couple years. But I just want to know, like, what sort of things are you worried about? Anything as far as, like, you had your fears early on, are those fears still there for this challenge that we've set? Are there any other concerns that you have over, because we still have another 2 years mm-hmm. left, or hopefully a little less? But
yeah, I think that some of those are still there. Like, as hopefully the pandemic will eventually die down, we're still going to have those situations where we can't necessarily do all the things that we want to when it comes to spending time with family and friends. But what this whole experience the past 6 months has taught me is that this is super doable, and we can definitely continue for the next 2-ish years, but also in the future. And I've been realizing that we can, instead of paying more money to our loans, we can still save those large chunks of money and be able to build wealth and potentially retire early. That's something that I would be really excited about. We can take those trips that we want to take, and just living below our means but still very comfortably is something that we can realistically continue in the long run. Mm-hmm. And that'll position us really well for whatever we want to do in the future.
Yeah. We haven't actually talked about it really in these episodes, but we've talked about it privately amongst ourselves that, you know, once these student loans are gone, there's nothing really stopping us from doing something very similar in a similar period of time mm-hmm. for our house. And then we would have no debt whatsoever in probably about 4.5 years, mm-hmm. you know, from beginning of this year. So
yeah, and have
another
great
4 more years, we could have no debt whatsoever.
And it'd be great to be able to own our house, have zero debt at like 35, late 30s.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really exciting. It's making me where I thought that I would be worried and nervous and ready to end this. I'm just more excited about what we can continue doing.
That was my hope for you.
Aw, you act like I spend all this
No,
money.
you don't. You don't. But I also knew that, like, for me, this is something that I kind of thrive at a little bit, I feel. So it's nice to know that somebody's on board, with my craziness.
I've been on board the whole time. But yeah, I think that you were more sure of it.
Mm-hmm.
I had more worries going into it, even though I was on board and ready to do it. I thought it was going to be sort of a hardship rather than like, oh, this is actually great and we can continue doing this.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, unless you have anything else, we're going to call it an episode right here, folks. All right. So seriously, thank you guys we've been getting a lot of nice words over the past 6 months, and we're really appreciative. We are glad that so many people have supported us through this and have felt comfortable sharing things about their own financial situations. We hope to get a few more people sort of involved in the future, and we'll look at the best ways we can to do that. But again, just thank you guys so much, and we hope that you'll stick it out with us for the next 6 months at least, and we'll just see how we go from there.
Yeah. Right. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks for watching. We post videos on the 1st and 15th of every month.
I would say that's the number one thing for me, but it's not a purchase,
Right, but it's just... We sold our dogs. A lot of the rocks, the river rock that's in that area, we got for free because... We got it for free because we saw a post of someone who was offering free landscaping rock if